Hi, I'm Dani Gasparini, and welcome to this segment of Penn Voice. I am joined today by Hilary Papendick, who is the Climate Change and Adaptation Program Manager, County of San Mateo, Office of Sustainability. Your business card must be 2 feet long with that title.
It's a mouthful.
But nonetheless, extremely important. And we have a very important topic to talk about today. And so much so that we're extending our Penn Voice segment to 15 minutes today because we didn't think we could just get it in our 10-minute segment. So we are going to be talking about sea level rise and climate change. So just give us a little background. I know it's been on everybody's forefront, but what is sea level rise?
Great, and thank you for having me today. Sea level rise is happening because temperatures are increasing because of climate change. In the past 100 years, we've seen already almost 2 degrees Fahrenheit of warming globally. And as temperatures increase, sea level rise happens for a number of different reasons. The main reasons are as temperatures go up, oceans warm. As oceans warm, they literally expand, getting bigger. The second reason is as temperatures increase, ice sheets melt. Land-based ice sheets, such as Antarctic ice sheet and the Greenland ice sheet.
Right.
And as those melt, that adds fresh water to the ocean.
Right. So I know that we've had, especially with this presidential election, we've had so much conversation about climate change and some saying there hasn't been, or it just doesn't exist. So when you talk about degrees changing, this is data that we've been capturing, and San Mateo County has actually been doing a lot of data capture regionally and nationally, and obviously locally. So tell us about the report, and then what are your next steps in trying to educate the community about sea level rise and how it impacts us locally?
Sure. So just in terms of climate change happening, so scientists have been measuring data change as well as temperature change, as well as changes in greenhouse gas emissions for quite some time. So the temperature change that we've seen in globally, scientists agree that most of it is due to human-caused climate change. The sea level rise, so we've seen 8 inches of sea level rise so far in our county, and that's measured at the San Francisco tide gauge. Going forward, we could see a 1/2 foot to 2 feet of sea level rise by 2050, and 1.5 feet to 5.5 feet of sea level rise by the end of the century. So that's a big change.
Right.
And we, as part of our effort at the county, we're looking at what does that mean for our different sectors, for our populations living here? How could that affect our day-to-day lives going forward? So what our study has done is taken different amounts of sea level rise and mapped that on the coast and the bayside to look at when do our highways become inundated, how could this affect the global economy drivers that we have, SFO and our tech industry along the bayshore, and then what different types of our human populations could be affected by changes in sea level rise.
So one of the things that you mentioned in the beginning of this answer was warming happens because we as humans are doing things differently. We've probably got more population on our Earth, and then we have, as you said, gas and emissions that are going into the air, and that's also causing some warming. So I know we could approach this conversation from a lot of different respects. One is, what are we going to do to lower those emissions and sort of change that climate change, or how do we reduce that rapid or that increasing of temperature? The other is we need to get information about what climate change and sea level rise means to us today, because we're living with it, right? So we can get better and try and do things differently and slow it, but today we're living with it. So we're going to choose to talk about today, we have it, we're living with it, these are the statistics that we have today. So what does it mean for me, whether I live inland or on the coast?
Yes, so that's exactly right. We've already committed ourselves to a certain amount of sea level rise going forward because of the greenhouse gas emissions we've emitted. So what does it mean for you living on the shoreline or the coastside? Well, it affects everyone in the county, whether they live on the coastside or the shoreline. So for people living in areas that are close to the shoreline, this could mean in the near term more nuisance flooding during high tides, bigger storms, when we have storm events like we've seen recently, it could mean an increase in erosion, which we've actually seen along the coast in Pacifica and in other areas. So in the short term, we'll see periodic episodes of flooding, erosion that get worse over time. In the long term, as sea levels become greater, we could see areas that become permanently inundated in the county. And this has the ability to affect, I think I mentioned before, so many different sectors of our society. 7 of our 9 wastewater treatment plants are located in areas that are low-lying, and everyone in the county depends on wastewater treatment plants, no matter where they live. As well as SFO is at risk from about 2 feet of sea level rise. And then, of course, our highways, our roads, which everyone depends on, whether you live, work, recreate in the county, or really the region. A lot of people are traveling through our county to get to other job centers.
And one of the measures that communities have taken long ago was to build levees that sort of protected from sea to inland residential and commercial areas. Redwood Shores is a great example of where we have levees. Is it as easy as let's just build higher levees so that as sea level rises, we just have a higher level of protection?
You know, I wish it was that easy. And levees do provide us some protection against flooding. However, when you think about it from an individual city perspective versus a regional perspective, let's say a city goes in and builds a levee around their city, the water's not going to just stay around that levee. Water can go around those edges, and so this could actually cause more flooding in areas adjacent to levees. So this quickly becomes a regional issue. Also, sea level rise could cause the groundwater table to rise. So let's say you build a levee to protect the seawater from coming in. We also might see increases in groundwater on the other side of the levee. So we really need to be thinking about this problem from a regional solution and then looking at all the different intricacies of groundwater, stormwater, and the bay and coastal flooding.
Okay, so we do know that it's here, and we do know we have some projections as to what sea level rise will be in the future. So what are some of the conversations that are happening, including the levee conversations about protecting the inland, the freeways, the runways at SFO, wastewater treatment plants, et cetera?
So there are a number of different projects that are underway and conversations are starting. There are some projects to raise levees, such as in Foster City, and this, in the short term, is really not a bad solution, especially in terms of protecting our communities. And one thing we can do is build to one height of sea level rise, but build in the adaptive capacity to change that going forward so that we can prepare for future amounts of sea level rise. Other projects that are underway are restoration projects for wetlands. And wetlands actually are able to help reduce the impacts of flooding and storm surge coming in. So by restoring wetlands today, we're actually building in a natural way to reduce flooding and also actually absorb greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, I think it's sort of, if you think about it, it's sort of that buffer and the absorption of that increase, and it's able to take the increase and the decrease as it rises and falls.
Yes, exactly. So there's a project that's just in the environmental review phase called the Safer Bay Project, which is near the San Francisco Creek in the East Palo Alto area, running from Mountain View all the way up to the Redwood City Menlo Park border, that would incorporate wetland restoration as well as levees to help protect against flood risk today and then sea level rise in the future. So it's great that we're already starting to think about and build solutions.
Well, in San Mateo County, economic development is extremely important. So to lose either freeway access for transportation and the economy and/or airport, that would be devastating to communities, right? So what are the kinds of things that we're going to do to ensure that we keep our commerce functioning and moving, especially with San Francisco Airport, which I think the runway is right on the edge of the bay. So those are a little bit more complex.
They are
questions and solutions.
Yes, it is complex. The solutions are a little bit more complex. It's not possible to build a wetland right next to the airport because that could cause more birds, and birds and airplanes don't necessarily get along. So the airport has been doing a lot of work to look at this issue and look at ways that they can potentially raise the runways, build in walls that are able to protect against sea level rise, but not reduce the ability for planes to land.
Right.
So they've been looking at also in the near term, identifying, are there some areas along the shoreline that are lower that could be filled in that could help reduce flooding on the runways while they look for more comprehensive solutions.
So if a community member watching this program says, I'd like to learn a lot more about what this conversation is and the statistics and all of the data that you've been coming up with through this this plan, where can they go?
One place to go is to our website, which is seachangesmc.com.
Okay,
we have
we'll
a
put that up on the
resources
board.
page, which has the latest, best available information on the sea level rise projections, as well as information on projects that are going on around the Bay Area. There's also a new opportunity to get involved in actually thinking about solutions to the problem.
Right.
So the Bay Area Resilient by Design Challenge is going to launch this April, and that's going to be design teams coming up with solutions in 10 areas around the Bay, and they'll be looking for community members to come up with
So my question was going to be, what can individuals do to get involved other than become informed about this issue? But one is to come up in these design teams with some creative and practical solutions on what we do to protect our communities and our commerce in San Mateo County.
Yes.
So what are the other issues that you want to make sure that individuals understand about sea level rise and about climate change and about the work you do within your office, within the County Office of Sustainability?
One of the most important things, which we already touched on a little bit already, is that this is not an issue that can be solved by any particular jurisdiction or city. And it's one of the reasons why the county has been working on this issue. Is this really needs to be a regional as well as multi-jurisdictional effort to look at solutions that protect our economy and our highways, as well as some of our lower income communities that live near the coastline. So we really need to be thinking broader than just every city.
Well, and I think you should probably give our viewers a little bit of an understanding about the multi-jurisdictional, not only with the cities and the county, but Army Corps of Engineers, BCDC, FEMA. There's quite a few agencies involved in all of this, all within their own structure and their own sort of idea of what they can control and what they make decisions on. So
yes, it's like a tapestry, which and those jurisdictions are there for a reason, to protect different parts of our environment and the way we build things. However, when you start to look at something, let's say just a wetland restoration project, which would help reduce sea level rise in the future, you're starting to look at, the Army Corps, the BCDC stands for the Bay Conservation and Development Commission, which has jurisdiction over the 100-feet band of the shoreline. Right. And so there's the wastewater
plants, a whole nother jurisdiction.
So I believe there's, between 7 and 9 different entities that we would need to get permits for if we're looking to do a project. There are efforts. While this is one of the things that people are looking into, how can we streamline the permitting process for projects that need to happen now, the wetland restoration projects, different levee projects, so that we're not getting in our own way in terms of being able to actually get these projects permitted that have a benefit to everyone.
So have all of the various jurisdictions, both the state, federal, and local jurisdictions, decided that the county should actually be the one to take the lead in looking at the issuance of these permits and or sort of being the one leading the cause to get all of the various stakeholders in place?
Yeah, I think there are different types of groups that are looking at it, and the county needs to be involved in all of those discussions. So I know there are some different nonprofit and research groups that are looking at the issue, which actually can help kind of at a 1,000-foot level to see how the county is working with cities and also the permitting agencies. And actually, FEMA held a workshop last week that we went to on the coast that had the Army Corps, NOAA, USGS, FEMA, and state agencies all there just to start getting people in the same room. So there's progress.
That's great. Well, Hilary, thank you so much for joining us. This is a conversation that we've only, and no pun intended, touched the top of the iceberg, and one that we need to continue to bring back to our community, because there is a lot of work to be done and a lot of conversation to be had about what the solutions are. And I hope that people will look at the website and find your creative ways in which people can get involved in the solutions for this issue. So thank you so much for joining us.
Great, thank you so much for having me.
And we'll see all of you next time on Penn Voice.